Welcome back to another explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're going to break down a genuinely chilling narrative. We're looking at a story that takes that classic strangers lost in the woods trope and twists it into a true, inescapable supernatural nightmare. We're doing a step-by-step breakdown of the infinite grin of Whispering Woods. If you enjoy dissecting the architecture of a perfectly structured horror story, well, you are in the exact right place.
So, let me ask you this. What actually happens when a simple wrong turn leads you into a forest where the fundamental rules of time and space completely break down? That's the core premise we're unpacking today. We aren't just dealing with some spooky, dark forest. We're dealing with an environment that actively traps its victims. I want you to keep this concept of a broken reality in mind as we trace the harrowing journey of our two main characters, Arjun and Radhika.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Marooned in the fog.
Our narrative kicks off past midnight. We've got a husband and wife, Arjun and Radhika, completely lost in a suffocating fog on a winding, unpaved road in an area known as the Whispering Woods. Now, this timeline perfectly maps out the escalation of their crisis. Notice how the intervals of time violently compress as the danger ramps up? It starts with a simple mistake, a missed highway turn minutes ago. That leads to hours of being stranded in these dense woods where GPS signals literally do not exist. Then, the real trouble hits. In a matter of seconds, the car engine sputters, the dashboard lights violently flicker, and the car rolls to a halt with this pathetic hiss. And in an absolute instant, the headlights die. The batter is dead, or, maybe something worse. They are plunged into total pitch-black darkness.
I really want you to put yourself right there in the passenger seat for a second. Imagine you're sitting in a freezing car. You look out the window, and what do you see? Trees that look like tall, skeletal figures with branches literally clawing at the dark sky. But honestly, worse than what you see is what you hear, or actually, scratch that, what you don't hear. There is this heavy, unnatural stillness. No crickets, no wind, no nightbirds. It is a deafening, oppressive silence. This isn't just a quiet forest, it's a dead one.
Which brings us to Section 2, the abandoned house.
Look, desperate times call for desperate measures, right? They can't just sit in a freezing car all night. About 50 yards away, through the shifting fog, Arjun spots the faint outline of an old, double-story wooden house. There are no lights on, but the mere sight of a roof is a tiny glimmer of hope. They grab their only flashlight and crunch across the gravel toward it. As they approach, the house greets them. The front door creaks open on its own, swinging inward. It's almost as if the house is actively inviting them inside. And of course, they do what you're yelling at the screen for them not to do. They go inside. It's the classic horror movie mistake. But structurally, it's brilliant. The narrative strips away all their other options. It is freezing cold, the car is dead, and they are completely vulnerable. Entering a terrifying, seemingly empty house is actually their most logical option for basic survival. So they cross the threshold.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the horror immediately shifts from visual to sensory. The second they enter, they are hit with this incredibly thick scent of damp earth, rot, and a sickly sweet odor, kind of like decaying flowers. And the visual of the house matches this decay perfectly. It is completely frozen in time. The beam of their flashlight sweeps across dust-covered Victorian furniture and wallpaper hanging off the walls like peeling sheets of dead skin. When Arjun calls out a hello, the only response is his own voice echoing hollowly back to him. Exhausted, terrified, they decide to just sit on a dusty couch in the living room and wait for morning.
Moving right along to Section 3, the Whispering Terror.
So they sit in this pitch-black living room for an agonizing hour. The beam of their single flashlight is just resting on the floor, casting these monstrous shadows. They're just sitting there, listening to their own breathing. And then the isolation breaks. It starts from the ceiling directly above them. A soft, rhythmic sound. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Arjun tries to brush it off as rats, but come on, he knows better. The scratching stops. Then, a loud, heavy thud echoes from the floor above, followed by slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps. Something is walking upstairs. It moves across the ceiling, stops right above them, and then absolute silence. Right on cue, the flashlight begins to flicker, before dying completely.
In the sudden, total darkness, the temperature just plummets. Their breath turns to white mist. That sickly, sweet, rotting smell fills their lungs, suffocatingly intense. And then, from the dark corner of the living room, a voice speaks. It's not human. It is a raspy, multi-layered chorus of whispers that seems to vibrate directly inside their skulls. It tells them, "You shouldn't have come inside."
Radhika screams.
Arjun frantically smacks the flashlight until, click, the light flashes back on, and the beam illuminates an entity right in the corner of the room. It is impossibly tall. Its limbs are unnaturally long and bent at completely wrong angles, draped in a tattered black shroud. But the face is the true nightmare here. It has no eyes, just hollow, bleeding sockets, and stretching across its face is a wide, jagged, impossible grin that reaches from ear to ear. It doesn't walk. It glides toward them with sickening speed. This is a masterclass in uncanny valley horror, folks, taking human features and twisting them just far enough to trigger our deep, primal fight-or-flight instincts.
And that throws us right into Section 4, the endless loop.
Pure adrenaline takes over, and Arjun screams to run. They bolt into the hallway. Arjun slams his entire weight against the front door, but it's completely locked from the outside. So Radhika remembers a kitchen, desperately hoping for a back door. And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute panic of the moment. They sprint down the corridor. Arjun throws himself at the wooden back door, and the handle turns. It swings open to reveal the dark woods outside. But as they step across the threshold, they don't feel grass beneath their feet. They stumble backward, gasping for air, only to realize they are standing right back in the living room they'd just fled.
Just let that sink in for a second. Running out the back door only forces them to enter the house from the front all over again. The geographical reality of the house is entirely broken. It's a supernatural spatial loop. There is literally no way out. And right as this horrifying realization sets in, the flashlight flickers and dies permanently. The heavy footsteps start again in the pitch black right in front of them. The air is so incredibly cold now that ice actually begins to crackle on the living room windows.
In the dark, Radhika's grip on Arjun's hand tightens and then violently lets go. Arjun calls out to her, reaching into the blackness, but his hand only meets empty air. Then he hears it, a wet, tearing sound echoing through the room. A choked gasp, suddenly cut short. Arjun falls to his knees, sobbing, feeling blindly in the dark. His hand brushes against something on the floor. It's wet, and it's warm.
As Arjun pulls his hand back, knowing exactly what he's touching, two icy, skeletal hands wrap around his face from behind. The skin feels like rotting parchment. The multi-layered entity leans in so close, he can literally feel its freezing breath on his neck, and it whispers directly into his ear. Stay forever.
Let's move on and see how this builds into the conclusion. Section 5. The morning after. The narrative presents a stark, almost impossible contrast here. At night, this house was a pitch-black, freezing death trap filled with rotting smells and a murderous entity. But the morning after? Total whiplash. The sun rises over the whispering woods, the suffocating fog completely clears. A highway patrol officer pulls up behind an abandoned sedan on a dirt road, walks up to the house, and finds the front door wide open, swinging gently in the breeze. He steps inside and the house is totally empty. It is bright, silent, and covered in decades of completely undisturbed dust.
As a literary detective dissecting this case file, you've got to love this part. We have to look closely at the officer's findings because this beautifully subverts everything we expect from a crime scene. Out front, the car has the keys still in the ignition, and the luggage is perfectly untouched. But inside the house, nothing. Absolutely zero signs of a struggle, not a single drop of blood. And most impossibly, in a house blanketed by thick dust, there are absolutely no footprints. It is physically impossible. Arjun and Radhika simply vanished without leaving a physical trace of their existence.
Well, almost no trace. The officer finds one single item resting on the living room floor, a small battery-operated flashlight. When he picks it up and turns it over, he notices something underneath it. Something fresh has been etched directly into the dusty old wooden floorboards. 2 words, carved deeply and frantically into the wood. So, what were the 2 words? The source material leaves us hanging on this absolutely terrifying question, forcing our own imaginations to fill in the blank. Was it a warning, a cry for help, or a final message from Arjun as reality completely closed in around him? We are left haunted by the unresolved mystery of the loop. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this deep dive into the sliding reality of the Whispering Woods gave you chills, and I can't wait to unravel our next mystery with you soon.